Tomorrow will be yet another eventful day in an already eventful week. This as the president's promised to release the complete, fully declassified and unredacted transcript of his phone call with the Ukrainian president. And as we've mentioned, a senior administration official tells NBC News that the White House expects to hand over the whistleblower complaint to Congress by Thursday. That is the same day that acting DNI Joseph Maguire testifies before the Senate and House Intelligence Committees. Tonight, the chairman of House Intel, Adam Schiff, said he is also looking forward to hearing from the actual whistleblower.
We're going to insist that the whistleblower be protected, that they come to Congress, that they have the full authority to discuss the substance of their complaint, and that we see the complete and unadulterated complaint. We have all too much experience, Chris, with the administration through their willing participants like Bill Barr misrepresenting official documents. The White House shouldn't even have this complaint. The president says everybody has seen it. That in itself is a huge problem.
And here to talk about all of it, Annie Karni, White House reporter for The New York Times, and Clint Watts, a former FBI special agent, a distinguished research fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute, and author of Messing with the Enemy, Surviving in a Social Media World of Hackers, Terrorists, Russians, and Fake News. Clinton, let me start with you. You understand this world that we're all, in some cases, discovering for the first time. But when we talk about the transcript of the president's phone call that apparently is due to be released tomorrow, and also this whistleblower complaint, what can we actually expect here? When a transcript is put together, how many people are listening in on the call? What types of people are there? How faithful is that transcript normally going to be? And how thorough would a whistleblower complaint be if folks are just taking a look at it from the outside?
Yeah, I can't imagine it being very thorough. And I think the other thing is I don't expect it to be a direct transcription of everything that was said on the call. I'd be shocked if that's what actually came out tomorrow. Instead, I think what is normal is note-taking. It's very normal for them to have one or more note-takers during a call. Whenever you're talking to a foreign leader, they would then write those things down. They also keep some things sensitive, right? Like, so if there's a personal conversation that might go on or something that's maybe rapport building, they're not probably going to write all of those things down. And so it really makes me question what we will actually see. My feeling is whatever the White House releases, they probably don't feel is going to be damaging to their cause. And so I don't expect that to be there. I think the complaint is far more important. What's kind of gotten lost in all of this is, based on my reading of everything I've seen so far in the public, I don't see why this would only be about one phone call. Based on the reports out of the Washington Post tonight, several other accounts that I've read through the weekend, it seems there were multiple points at which this case was building over time for the whistleblower complaint. And maybe the phone call was the last straw, or maybe the first straw that started to put this puzzle together. So when we get to the point where we're starting to talk about the complaint, starting to talk about the actual whistleblower show up to Congress, I think that's when we'll get more to the bottom of what this all is really about.
Annie Karni, two things have dramatically changed in the last 24 hours. The first we've been talking about for most of this show so far, the House Speaker coming out in favor all of a sudden of an impeachment inquiry, all sorts of other Democratic members who'd previously been quiet on the subject coming out and calling for the same thing. The other thing that's changed, though, is the White House just this afternoon and this evening saying, the president himself saying on Twitter, OK, here comes the transcript of my phone conversation tomorrow. And then also apparently this whistleblower complaint. What is behind that change on the White House's part in terms of potentially releasing both of these things?
It's a dramatic shift. If you'll recall, on the Sunday shows, they sent out their two top cabinet officials, Secretary of State Pompeo and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, to make the rounds saying that it would be a bad precedent to release this transcript, that only under the most extreme circumstances, that was a Pompeo quote, should anything like that ever happen. And now the president is saying, fine, take a look. What happened here was that inside the White House, there is some divide over this, but they're basically, the president came to the conclusion that this was a politically untenable position for him to stay in, to say we're not giving anything here, that the appearance of stonewalling was potentially more damaging to him than anything that the whistleblower might have actually said, and anything that might be in this transcript of the call. Again, I agree that they're making a very aggressive push that there's nothing that we will see in this transcript or partial transcript that will be released tomorrow that will be damaging to the president. but they seem to be sort of, it's a gamble. It's clearly was not their first choice of strategy, given what we saw them saying on Sunday, but it's their best choice as to where they are now.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.